Good morning and welcome to the Coastal Resilience Scorecard Workshop. My name is Stuart Sarkozy-Bonasi. I am the CEO for World Ocean Council, and I'll be facilitating today, and I'll introduce you to our main speaker. But also, can you not hear?
It went off. I don't try waving it.
Oh, wow. This died.
Oh, no, we hear you.
Do I need it? I mean, if nobody's talking.
Yes, it's on.
We'll see. Okay, because the mic right here for online. Okay, let's just kind of see how it works. If you are not hearing it from the mics, I think this thing died immediately. Yeah, it did. So welcome to everybody from our combined collaborative of the Continuum. And when I say the Continuum, there are 7 partners represented in the room. They're a part of a NOAA-funded collaborative. And that collaborative brought us together yesterday for our meeting, and we said, and I'll give you some of the background, but we said, why don't we try to do something while we're all in Florida and bring other parts of Florida together? And it just sort of started with one email, and now we have all of you in the room, which is fantastic. For us, and especially with those of us who've been in the kind of resilience space for some time, the ability to connect innovators, startups, funders, accelerator programs, cities, corporations, et cetera, all in the same room and have this conversation about the scorecard is really kind of exciting for us because sometimes those spaces do not interact. And many of us have already talked this morning on how we continue to have in the sort of development of resilience and innovation, a space between that does not talk to each other. So you're going to hear from creators of the scorecard. You're going to hear from each other as we go into the breakouts. And right now, the collaborative that I spoke of, the Continuum, which includes accelerators, incubators, St. Pete Innovation District, and University of South Florida, is also part of the kind of network for Florida that we want to help grow a little bit further. At this point, I have to say a huge thank you to Allison Barlow from St. Pete Innovation District. This would not be happening without her and Amber and her team, especially because she has like a million other things, as you probably know, if you know her, already going on today and this week, including our event yesterday, which she facilitated. So partner in crime and maker of this event. It's great to have you joining because, again, it was a little bit of an impromptu set of emails that sort of set this off. And when you hear from Cheryl and you hear about the background on this, that part of it certainly isn't impromptu or sort of something that hasn't been in the works for some time. In November, World Ocean Council at our Sustainable Ocean Summit had what we called these Blue Sparks announcements. And Eugene Montoya, who should be online, he couldn't resist. He's in California with his family. And he's like, I'll tap in. I'm like, it's pretty early for California, but he is getting online. He came to Barcelona to announce this scorecard. And again, when you hear about the scorecard, this isn't a be-all, end-all. It's not at the very deep level. As you'll hear from Cheryl and others, it's at a kind of overarching level that will really trigger other work that you're already doing or connect to work that you're doing. And it's based on some principles and sort of the wedge design guidelines, some things that some of you may be familiar with already. And the important thing is that we realize while this is a Florida-based and kind of regional conversation, especially to the Tampa and St. Pete area, it is emblematic of what we're trying to do in other places that bring these ecosystems together. So that's why we wanted to do it as a workshop for the latter half after you hear from Cheryl. We also, and Cheryl did this with Eugene, did a webinar in December as a follow-up to the announcement at the beginning of November, which had a whole bunch of people on there hearing about the scorecard, having a Q&A. And that's what really sort of triggered this idea that, wow, if we're going to all be together, let's have a conversation in the room. Let's talk about where the scorecard is going and engage you from your various angles in what might be the next phase of this as it rolls out. And As you saw, we're going to have digitization breakout, toolkit, and partnerships and fundraising. There's a lot more to talk about, but we're going to have you guys break into groups and have those conversations and then bring it all together. So today allows us to go a layer deeper and that way start to take it apart. You'll hear from Cheryl some of more of the origins, some case studies. And then when we leave here, there's a sort of regional and then greater Florida aspect to this. For some of you who I've known a long time or others that we wanted to get here from various resilience offices and other places, this is also a way of connecting to some of that early coastal resilience, resilient cities and other work via innovation, via startups, and via these other elements that the continuum and many of you are already working on. So enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl. And before I do that, the agenda for today, again, trying to focus on engaging all of you. Once we hear about this and we do the Q&A, we're going to move into these breakouts. And we've got a good chunk of time to do the breakouts and then report back and then kind of have a wrap up. Again, having done this in 2 different formats before this, the idea is really now to kind of go to that next layer and give you guys a break in the middle of it. And after we do the wrap up, you're welcome to stay and chat. We've already talked about people kind of grabbing lunch or doing whatever to kind of connect with each other, because obviously some of you see each other all the time and some not. So I'm super happy to have Cheryl Hapke join us. And some of you may know her from previous USGS work, but she's a senior consultant for coastal resilience at Fugro and a research professor at USF in the marine science area. So very lucky to have her with us, especially because she's been one of the authors on the scorecard. So over to you.
Cool. Thank you. Good morning. I probably don't need this. Is there a pointer on this?
Yep.
Back.
You can just go side to side.
Oh, really? That changes the. Is there a pointer?
Oh, pointer? No, I don't know.
Okay.
Is there a pointer? No.
No.
Okay. Do I need this? Excellent. Okay. Yeah, so I'm here today. This was funny. I've been part of the core development team, working as a member of Arise US. I'll tell you a little bit about that. For the past couple of years, and all of a sudden this workshop popped up and they're like talking about this workshop in St. Pete. And then it's like, well, where is it? And it's like, oh, well, it's at the Arc Innovation. I'm like, wow, that's about a mile from my house. This is cool. So it worked out really well. So I'm really excited to be here today to present. This has been largely volunteer work taking place with my close colleagues, Eugene Montoya, Peter Williams, and Jeremy Novak. For the past 2 years, and it's still a work in progress. So Jeremy is with the Global Development College. I'm obviously here today as Fugro. I think I saw a lot of you last week as USF, so I wear both hats. And then the Waterfront Alliance and Arise US. So here we go. The contents or kind of the agenda for this presentation will be to tell you a little about how many people know what Arise US is. Okay, good. I'm glad I put some content in. So we'll talk a little bit about what Arise US is, because they're the main driver behind the scorecard. And then we'll get into the Coastal Resilience Scorecard, specifically talking a little bit about the Coastal Resilience Partnership, how that integrates, as Stuart alluded to, how that integrates with the Waterfront Alliance Water Edge Design Guidelines, or WEDGE as we call it. And its relationship to the Coastal Resilience Scorecard, and then just talking a little bit about the interplay of temporal and spatial scales within the scorecard. Couple case studies, and then Q&A, and we really want to hear from you. This is about not me talking to you, but you telling us what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what more do you need, where would you like to see this go? Okay, what is Arise US? We'll start there. Arise US is part of a larger Arise network. It is a UN-sanctioned disaster risk reduction effort. So it's sponsored, stood up, whatever, by Arise. By the UN. It's organized in country networks. So there's 35 country networks currently in the world. Some are active, really active, some aren't. The most active ones are in the Americas and Asia. So we're, here in the US, we are one of the most active networks. It's, the work can range anything from advocacy and policy through community-based projects like we're trying to do here, and tools. It's generally like a range of businesses, right? It's a business network. So it's large corporations like Fugro, 11,000 people, right? And then it's mid-sized firms and then individual LLC owners or traders. But we have partnerships with some universities, as well as NGOs that do, integrate with us. And there's the links on the right, if you want to check anything out, take a picture of it. Okay, the coastal, oh, there it is. Here, now I can look here instead of turning my head. So the Coastal Resilience Partnership was actually stood up as we were working on the Coastal Resilience Scorecard. And, around that, coastal community resilience, that, the idea was that the Waterfront Alliance and Arise US would form a formal partnership to co-lead and design and execute the Coastal Resilience Scorecard. And again, as we've said, and sort of powered by the resilience, ecology, and community access ethos of Wedge. The scorecard, like other scorecards before it, there's a wildfire scorecard. Like Stuart said, Peter loves scorecards. There's a cities scorecard that's not necessarily for coastal cities. There's wildfire, there's others, and these are all framed around the UN Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which may or may not be something you're familiar with. I will talk a little bit more about that. What that is composed of, that Sendai framework, is 10 essentials for making cities resilient, and they are all across the board. Again, I'll go into that, assuming that most people aren't necessarily familiar with that. Currently, Fugro, my role at Fugro, and my colleague Jeremy at the Global Development College are informally part of a partnership of the Coastal Resilience Partnership. We're just working to formalize the MOUs and haven't gotten around to it, essentially. So we're part of those 4 groups are the core development team. Okay, the scorecard, how is Wedge involved? How many people are familiar with Wedge? Okay, so let's see, that's not a lot. All right, so Wedge the Waterfront Alliance is based out in New York, but they work all over the country and, globally. They encourage any waterfront effort in enhancing coastal resilience to integrate a series of design standards. And you can kind of see those down here. Oops, I'm thinking I have an arrow. Site assessment and planning, climate and hazard resilience, community access is a big part of Wedge. Edge composition, natural resources and sustainability, and innovation. Those are kind of like the key things. So they really are hoping to encourage, when projects are undertaken in a stretch of this, in any given city, they consider these design standards. And you actually, if you do, you can get Wedge certified. There's an example that I'll show at the end that is Jose Marti Park in Miami. And that project is Wedge certified. So it's, it just gives it a little bit more of a boost. As I mentioned before, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction has 3 main themes, and those are prevention, again, thinking of disaster risk reduction, prevention, response, recovery. And so then the way that Wedge and Arise, or the Sendai Framework, are coming together, mashing up basically in this Coastal Resilience Scorecard effort, is making sure that we're moving from where we are currently sitting most of the time and being reactive to disasters, to trying to think about becoming proactive to disaster response. Okay, the 10 essentials. Again, I mentioned prevention, response, recovery, but if you look at the colors, the blue, turquoise, those are all prevention. So the Sendai Framework is very focused on prevention, organizing, and then if you're thinking about this, think about a city, right? And all the different departments in the city have to work together to organize for resilience, identify, understand, and risk scenarios, strengthen financial capacity, urban, resilient urban development, natural buffers are considered, strengthening institutional capacity, considering that the social and cultural resilience as well, and infrastructure resilience, waterproofing buildings, raising buildings, that sort of thing. And then finally, the last two essentials, 9 and 10, 9 is focused on response planning, getting ready, knowing that, hey, we live in Florida, a hurricane's coming. It's not if, it's when. So thinking about that planning ahead of time. And then finally, realizing that even with the best planning and the best resilience, you're going to have impacts after a major event, considering what will need to be done to recover. All right. So why a coastal resilience scorecard? Well, probably the first 3 bullets, I don't need to tell anybody in this room. People living along the coast are impacted with climate change, rising sea levels, increased frequency of intense storms, severe damage. Again, I don't need to tell you this group, but what I do want to focus on is the final bullet there. That is the Coastal Resilience Scorecard is intended to provide a guided deeper dive under the 10 essentials of the Sendai framework to allow the cities to consider the full breadth of their resilience issues. And I keep saying cities, because that's what this is designed for, but it could be something different. It could be a corporation with a large development, along the coast. It could be small villages in the Caribbean islands. And this was built as a global tool, not only a US tool. So using the scorecard, and there will be a QR code at the end of this that you can scan. There are 2 versions of it. There's a short form and a long form. And the short form has about 40 questions, the long form, 140 questions, right? And the idea is that they're all focused on the 10 essentials. But what we're saying is with any entity using the scorecard, you can do all 10 essentials, or if you're perfectly happy, you think you're really good in 9 of them and you just want to focus in 1 essential, that's fine. It's not necessary to do the whole thing. We also recommend that if you or your organization does decide to undertake the scorecard, we provide a default scoring scheme, but you can use whatever scoring scheme you want that you're most comfortable with. And what we generally are giving the advice is everybody really should start with a short form. Don't try to take on the long form right off the bat. To get your feet wet, use a short form. Once you've gotten through the short form, what that will do is for each of the 10 essentials, it will show you where you're strongest and weakest. So then if you want, you could use the long form in your weakest areas to do a much deeper dive into that particular essential. Around that essential, it could be the financial one, it could be the community one. Results are confidential to any user. If you want to, we always are interested in promoting people using the scorecard. So if you want us to share your results, we'd be happy to, but it's not something that we would do unless you want us to. And what you get when you do it right now, to me, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but again, this is all new. The scorecard is a PDF that you go through and read. And then the Excel file is where you score yourself. So we are right now working to get that digitized, right? So it's an online interactive scorecard, but right now it's the good old Excel file and a PDF as a guide. Okay, this is just an example of one essential that I spent some time working on. This is essential 5. This is actually a snapshot right from the PDF of the scorecard. I'm not going to go through all this. You can't read all this. There's no reason to, but it's around safeguarding natural buffers to enhance ecosystems and really focused on the protection that ecosystems can provide in the realm of coastal resilience. So therefore, because it's around ecosystems, you can see that list, wedge. it really aligns well with wedge as well. And then I'll just, show you on this, what the way that it's laid out is you have the question, that's what you're going to score to yourself on. And then there's guidance. So it kind of gives you a little bit of background. So in this case, to what extent does the city identify and assess coastal ecosystem services to provide coastal disaster risk reduction? Gives you a little bit of an explanation of how to think about that. So there's even more guidance, some ideas of how to validate whether your scoring is realistic. Another question here, to what extent are coastal nature-based solutions balanced with human-built environments? And again, guidance on that. So that's not, I mean, I just wanted to show you how the scorecard is all laid out. So it makes sense if you decide to go in and have a look at it. Again, it's intended to teach cities. I keep saying cities, and I'll just, reiterate that can be entities, on how to evaluate both spatial and temporal scales of resilience. And so when we talk about the temporal scales of disaster risk reduction, we are not just considering those really acute events, the hurricanes, the, compound flooding. We're considering the long term and how long term can exacerbate those short term disasters. And then the way the scorecard is sort of laid out to think about is the spatial scales. So you have citywide, every department in the city, every entity in the city, every university in the city, like, everybody who functions as part of the innovation district, for instance. Then there's the built environment scale, wastewater treatment, stormwater treatment, that kind of thing, or stormwater drainage systems. And then the building scale, again, that's the things like individual buildings, floodproofing, raising them. And finally, the natural scale, right? That's where that wedge ties in. Okay. Now I'm just going to move into really quickly to two case studies. This is the one I was talking about before. It's at Jose Marti Park in Miami. It is wedge certified, wedge verified. What you can see is it integrates everything, all the different pieces. So we want to restore in water habitat, always make sure there's public access, things like floating boardwalks that can accommodate and accept that water, right? So it's living with water. Restoration of biodiversity, so really encouraging biodiversity and increasing biodiversity. Shoreline stabilization to prevent erosion, storm drainage design, things like drainage design, and the whole idea is to reduce flood risk for the community. So this is an example of a wedge case study, and then this is just a schematic case study that integrates gray, blue, green infrastructure. It's kind of the same idea. This might be a project that would lead to wedge, but you can see things like upland habitat, increased biodiversity, pedestrian access, right? So pedestrian access to the coast, floodproof deck. Again, it's like that living with accepting water into the community or into the area. And, the example here is a mangrove atoll. I don't know that I'd call it that, but that's what the schematic calls it. But what that does is not only increases, will attenuate wave energy and help enhance resilience, it provides ecosystem function, and it also provides some recreational opportunities in between where that atoll is and where the shoreline is. And I didn't want to spend that much time talking at you. So we are going to launch now into the part where we hear from you. This QR code will take you to the scorecard right now is hosted on Prevention Web. It's actually published there. It's a UN website. And you'll see if you get that code, you can download the link for the long form, short form, and the user guide.